The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent, a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Thousands of alien delegates filled the rows of floating platforms, their eyes fixed on the glowing sphere in the center of the hall. The sphere was old, older than any empire present in that room. No one knew exactly when it had been placed there, only that it had remained sealed for longer than most civilizations had existed. The council speaker raised his long silver hand and said in a cold voice, "The time has come to prove that humanity was nothing but a lie." A low ripple of laughter ran through the chamber. They had all grown up hearing stories about a mythical species called humans, creatures who once walked among the stars like gods. But the official records were clear. No proof had ever been found. No remains, no ships, nothing but ghost stories and rebel songs. The speaker's eyes glimmered with arrogance as he leaned closer to the sphere. "We will open the archive," he declared, deep beneath the chamber. A group of silent technicians worked around the control columns, their claws and fingers moving over ancient patterns no one fully understood. The sphere hummed, and a golden crack of light spread across its smooth surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single deep tone echoed through the hall like a heartbeat. The delegates shifted nervously. The lights above them flickered. And then the sphere spoke. It wasn't a mechanical sound. It was a voice, clear and human. "We were never gone." The sound froze every creature in the chamber. One of the delegates, a tall insectoid with pale green eyes, shouted, "This is impossible. The humans never existed." Another voice from the shadows whispered, "Then who is speaking?" The technicians stepped back as the sphere opened like a blooming flower. Inside, it was a small black device no larger than a hand. The device projected an image into the air, and suddenly the hall was filled with stars, a single blue planet glowing at the center. The name appeared in human letters, Earth. The speaker clenched his jaw. "This is a trick," he growled, but the image shifted again, showing fleets of ships with markings unknown to the council. Ships moving like living shadows through the dark. An old archivist from the back of the chamber whispered, "These records match the forbidden files. The ones from before the council's founding." Fear rippled through the delegates. Some leaned back in their floating chairs. Others whispered in their own languages. The speaker tried to shut down the machine, but the technicians shouted, "It's not responding." Alarms started flashing in red. The sphere's voice grew louder. "You erased us." But the truth remembers. The lights in the chamber went out one by one, leaving only the projection of Earth floating in the darkness, far below the council's main floor. In a chamber no one had entered in centuries, something stirred. Old metal doors groaned open with a sound like thunder. Hidden machines awoke for the first time in thousands of years. Data streams lit up like veins of fire, and a pulse shot out across the stars, invisible to the naked eye, but strong enough to reach every corner of the galaxy. Every military system, every archive, every locked network suddenly received the same message. "Humanity exists." Back in the chamber, the speaker shouted, "Cut the power, destroy it." But the technicians had already lost control. "It's overriding everything," one cried. The delegates began to panic, their calm masks cracking. A massive alien with blue skin slammed his fist on the rail. "If this is true, everything we built is a lie," someone screamed. "The humans were real, and they're still out there." The speaker's voice shook with fury. "No, they're not. This is ancient garbage." But the machine answered him directly. "We hear you." The entire room fell silent again. One of the younger delegates, trembling, asked, "If humanity was real, why did they vanish?" The archivist stepped forward, his wrinkled hands clutching a faded data slate. "They didn't vanish. They were erased from history." The speaker turned toward him, his voice sharp. "You will be silent." But the archivist didn't stop. Long before the council, humans ruled parts of this galaxy. They built things no one could understand. They were too powerful, too different. So the council erased them to build its own empire. Whispers grew louder, anger and fear mixing like storm clouds. Suddenly the sphere projected another image. This time it wasn't stars, it was a face, human, pale skin, dark eyes, no emotion, just a voice. You hid the truth, but the truth never hides, delegates screamed as the face turned slowly, like it was looking at each of them through time. You called us a myth, but we remember, the speaker shouted. This is a threat, but the machine replied, no, this is a warning. The image zoomed out and showed a massive fleet emerging from a black rift in space, unlike anything they had ever seen. Silent, dark, and terrifying, the speaker stumbled back, sweat running down his scaled forehead. This can't be real, he whispered. The archivist stared at the image with shaking hands. It's a live feed, he said. This isn't history. It's happening now. Outside the council station, distant scanners began to blink. Strange energy spikes appearing on the outer edge of the galactic map. The same pattern that the machine had just shown. The signal was not from the past, it was from the present. Humanity had never disappeared. They had been watching, waiting. Delegates rushed toward the exits. Alarms screamed, guards shouted for order. The speaker tried to make an announcement, but no one listened. Everyone could feel the shift in the air. Like the moment before a storm breaks, the archivist whispered to himself. They're coming back, in the final moments before the power failed. The human face on the projection leaned forward, the eyes sharp and calm. We remember everything, it said. And then the sphere closed, the lights returned, and the hall erupted in chaos. Outside, the stars seemed unchanged. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy understood the truth it had buried. Humanity was not a story, not a legend, not a lie. They were real, and they had just spoken. And somewhere far beyond the council's reach, something was moving through the void, silent and unstoppable, a storm made of truth and vengeance, heading straight for the heart of the empire that tried to erase its name. The speaker stared at the empty sphere, his voice shaking. What have we awakened? No one answered, because deep down everyone already knew the lie was over. The humans were coming. The council station drifted silently in orbit above a dead world. The stars looked calm, but inside the massive structure, panic grew like fire behind closed doors. The signal from the ancient machine had reached every corner of the galaxy. No one could deny it anymore. Humanity was not a myth, and the evidence was alive, buried, and sending messages from somewhere deep in the void. In a dimly lit briefing room, a group of alien scientists stood around a glowing table, their faces pale, their eyes wide. The leader of the group, a tall figure with silver markings on his skin, spoke in a low voice. The council wants us to find the source before the public does. A small insectoid scientist clicked nervously. And what if the humans are actually there? The leader's voice turned sharp. Then we find them first, outside the station. A fleet of silent black survey ships prepared to leave, each one equipped with advanced scanners and cloaking fields. The council didn't want anyone to know about this mission. Not the public, not the media, not even their own armies. The location of the signal had been traced to a sector no one visited anymore, a star system sealed off centuries ago, officially listed as uninhabitable. But the machine had called from there, a voice that didn't belong to the past, but to the present. As the ships drifted into hyperspace, a strange pulse passed through their systems. Lights flickered, and one of the pilots whispered, I have a bad feeling about this. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the crew stared at the sight before them. A dead star hung in the center, surrounded by a graveyard of broken ships. Thousands of old vessels floated silently like bones of a forgotten war. Some still bore the markings of ancient alien empires that no longer existed. The signal was coming from the surface of a small black planet. Wrapped in storm clouds that never moved, the leader of the mission whispered, Send the first team. 3 landing crafts broke away from the main ship and disappeared into the swirling clouds. The atmosphere was thick. The ground below cracked and burned like it had seen a war that never ended. As the teams landed, they saw something they didn't expect. Massive structures made of smooth black metal stretched across the landscape. Silent and untouched, they didn't belong to any known species. Symbols were carved into the walls in sharp, straight lines. They matched the symbols recorded from the Council's forbidden archives. One soldier stepped closer, running his hand across the wall. "This is human," he whispered without thinking. The others froze. The word hung in the air like a ghost. They moved deeper into the ruins, their scanners going crazy. Every reading was unstable. One of the engineers shouted, "It's like something is still running beneath us." The leader touched his communicator. "Head toward the signals core." The tunnels were cold, the air thick with static. It felt like someone was breathing just behind them. They reached a large chamber and saw a sphere hanging in the air, glowing faintly, the same design as the one in the council chamber. But this one was bigger, alive and humming. One of the soldiers lifted his weapon. "Maybe we should destroy it before it does something." The scientist beside him shook her head. "No, it's not attacking, it's waiting." She stepped forward and placed her hand near the surface of the sphere. It reacted instantly, light spread out in rings, and a voice echoed through the chamber. "You came looking for a lie." The soldiers raised their weapons. The leader shouted, "Who are you?" The voice didn't answer directly. Instead, it spoke again, soft and calm. "We remember." Suddenly every screen and helmet display lit up with symbols, maps, and images of human ships moving across the galaxy. The same ships from the Council's secret records. Panic spread in the team. One soldier shouted, "They were here." "They were real," another whispered. "No, they're still here." The sphere showed human faces, eyes staring back, as if they could see the aliens standing in the room. The voice said, "You erased us, but we never left." The ground shook. Machines hidden beneath the ruins began to hum. Lights spread across the floor like veins. "It's waking something up," the leader shouted. "Everyone back!" But the doors behind them sealed shut with a loud metallic clang. The scientists scrambled to hack the system, but it was useless. The machine was in control now. A projection filled the chamber, showing a human fleet slowly moving through deep space. Their ships unlike anything the aliens had ever built. They were silent, cold, and perfect. The voice whispered, "You lied to your people, but the stars remember the truth." The leader grabbed his radio. "This is Team 1. We need extraction now." But the signal was gone, replaced by static above the planet. The command ship's lights flickered. The crew shouted as their instruments failed. Every channel filled with the same word, humanity. Inside the ruins, the soldiers tried blasting the doors, but the walls absorbed every shot like shadows, swallowing light. The scientist whispered, "It's not just a machine, it's alive." A metallic sound echoed through the tunnels. Like heavy steps coming from deep below, the leader shouted, "Form a line." They pointed their weapons toward the darkness. The sound grew louder, but nothing appeared. Then the sphere spoke again. "We are watching you." One soldier dropped his weapon, shaking. "They're here, above the planet." The command ship suddenly picked up new energy signatures. Not from the ruins, but from deep space. Hundreds of points lit up on their long-range scanners. Moving in formation fast and silent, the captain stared at the screen. "That's our fleet," an officer whispered. "But whose?" the captain replied with a dry voice. "Not ours." The signals matched the ancient human designs shown in the projections. Panic spread on the bridge as the communications officer screamed. "They're coming here, back on the surface." The leader's communicator flickered back to life for a brief second, and a voice came through, not the council, not their fleet, but a human voice, calm and cold. "You are standing where empires once begged for mercy," the line cut. The sphere pulsed like a heartbeat, and a beam of light shot into the sky, marking their location for whoever was out there. The leader whispered, "We've just called them." The scientist turned to him, pale. "No, they called us." The command ship's engines roared as the crew tried to leave orbit, but something blocked their path. Space rippled like water as shapes emerged from the dark. Black ships larger than anything they had ever seen. No sound, no warning, just presence. The captain stared at the screen, unable to speak. "They're not supposed to exist," he whispered, "inside the ruins." The sphere's voice echoed for the last time that night. "The lie ends where it began." And then the machines shut down, leaving the team in complete silence above them. Humanity's shadows stretched across the stars, moving closer, unstoppable. The galaxy had told itself a lie for centuries, but now the truth had answered, and it was awake. The command ship floated above the black planet like a single fragile leaf caught in a storm. The crew's faces were pale, their hands shaking on the controls. No one dared to speak too loudly outside the windows. The empty stars felt heavier than before. Silent and watching on the surface below, the exploration team was trapped inside the ruins, surrounded by ancient human machines that now pulsed with life. The sphere in the chamber still glowed softly, like it was breathing. The leader's voice echoed through the narrow tunnels. "Stay calm. No one moves unless I say so." But even he could hear the fear in his own voice. One of the soldiers whispered, "They're coming!" His hands clutching his weapon like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. The scientist near the sphere whispered back, "They're already here." The voice of the machine had gone quiet, but its presence filled the room like a heartbeat under the floor. Outside, the storm over the planet began to break. The black clouds split in long, sharp lines, revealing a night sky filled with moving shadows. They weren't clouds anymore, they were ships, enormous, silent ships that moved without sound. Inside the Council's war room, thousands of light years away, panic was spreading faster than any weapon could stop it. The emergency screens showed the same image over and over again, a massive human fleet moving through the void. No heat signatures, no communication signals, no identification codes, just an endless wave of black metal heading toward the planet where the signal came from. One council member slammed his fist on the table. "You said they were myths," another shouted. "How do you fight ghosts?" The speaker stood frozen, his voice cracking. "They are not ghosts." They were waiting. Back on the surface, the ruins began to shift, walls sliding open like they had been sleeping for centuries. The ground beneath the team started to tremble. A soldier shouted, "Something's moving." The leader ordered everyone to form a line. But the scientist was already staring at the center of the chamber. The sphere had opened, and inside it was a strange figure. Not made of flesh, not a hologram, but something in between. A human outline made of light and shadows. It stepped forward, its voice calm. "Why did you come?" The soldiers pointed their weapons at it. The leader shouted, "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head like it was trying to understand the question. "We are the forgotten." The air grew colder. A low sound like a heartbeat filled the entire chamber. The figure spoke again. "We built the stars you claim." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. The scientist whispered, It's human." The figure's eyes glowed faintly. "We never left." The walls of the chamber began to display old images, vast cities floating in space, fleets of human ships flying over alien worlds. The galaxy ruled not by the Council, but by humans. The leader clenched his jaw. "This can't be real," the figure answered softly. "Real doesn't need your belief." Above the planet, the Council's fleet finally arrived, dozens of warships surrounding the system. The captain of the flagship shouted commands as alarms screamed, "Lock onto the human fleet." But the scanners showed nothing. The human ships were there, clear as day, but their systems couldn't target them. They couldn't even get a lock. It was like trying to touch a shadow. One of the officers whispered, "They're inside the void layer." The captain turned pale. "No one can do that." But humans could, and they were already surrounding them. Inside the ruins, the figure's tone changed. "You built your empire on our ashes." The leader raised his weapon. "We didn't." The figure cut him off. "Your council erased us." The images on the walls turned into fire and war, showing alien fleets attacking human colonies, entire cities burning. The figure's voice lowered. "And we watched." The scientist stepped closer. "Why didn't you stop them?" The figure turned toward her. "Because you needed to believe the lie." Suddenly the chamber doors burst open, and the storm outside rushed in like a wave. Black drones with sharp edges filled the air, surrounding the team in a perfect circle. They moved like they had been waiting for this moment for centuries. The soldiers shouted. But the drones didn't attack. They simply hovered. their red lights blinking in rhythm with the heartbeat of the sphere. The leader whispered, "We're surrounded." The scientist shook her head slowly. "No, we're being measured." In orbit, the captain of the Council fleet received a transmission. The screen flickered and a human face appeared, calm and expressionless. "You tried to erase us," the voice said. The captain shouted. "Identify yourself," but the human ignored him. "We gave you centuries of peace, and you built your lies upon it." The captain raised his voice. "This is Council space." The human's expression didn't change. "It was ours first," the transmission cut off, and every system on the Council ships went dark. On the surface, the drones moved aside, creating a path that led deeper into the ruins. The figure turned and began walking. "Follow or be left behind?" The team hesitated, but the scientist stepped forward first. "We don't have a choice," she said softly. They walked down the path into a massive underground hall filled with ancient human machines. Long black ships were stored in silence. Untouched by time, the figure turned to them. "You called us with your lies." Above, the Council ships floated powerless as the human fleet appeared fully. Thousands of vessels emerging from the shadows like predators, circling their prey. No engines roared, no lights flashed, only silence. The captain whispered, "They're not attacking," an officer replied. "They don't need to." One by one, the Council ships began to lose control of their weapons. Their shields, their engines, every system bending to an invisible will. The leader of the ground team finally found his voice. "Why reveal yourselves now?" The figure's answer was simple. "Because your lie reached its end," the scientist whispered. "What are you going to do?" The figure looked up, as if listening to the fleet above. "We will remind the galaxy who built its stars." A deep rumble spread through the ruins as the old human ships began to wake, their black hulls lighting up with soft red lines. The ground trembled as one of them slowly lifted into the air. The soldiers took a step back, their fear mixing with awe. Outside, the human fleet opened its formation, making way for something larger moving in the dark. The captain of the Council flagship whispered, "There's something behind them." Then the scanners finally caught it, an object the size of a small moon, a dreadnought inside the ruins. The figure looked at the team for the last time. "Tell your Council, the stars do not belong to liars." And with that, it faded away like smoke, leaving only the heartbeat of the machines and the rising sound of human engines that hadn't spoken in 1,000 years. The leader fell silent, knowing this was no longer a secret mission. This was the beginning of something the galaxy wasn't ready for. The scientist looked up at the ceiling, whispering to herself. "They're back." And above the storm, the shadow of the human dreadnought swallowed the stars. The Galactic Council chamber shook with the sound of overlapping voices, every delegate shouting at once, panic flooding the room like a storm that couldn't be stopped. Giant screens floated in the center of the chamber, showing one image that froze even the most powerful rulers. A massive human dreadnought drifting through space like a silent god. Its black hull swallowing light, its engines quiet, its shape unlike anything the Council had ever built. The speaker slammed his hands on the podium and shouted, "This is not possible." But deep inside he already knew it was. The lie was over, and the truth was staring them in the face. On the floor below, guards rushed to lock down the hall as nervous leaders tried to leave through hidden doors. Some screamed about evacuation, some demanded war. Others whispered about surrender before a single shot had even been fired. One delegate, shaking, whispered, "This can't be a fleet. This is an army." The Council's head of defense appeared on the central screen, her voice shaking. "The human ships have surrounded the system. Our fleets can't fire. Our weapons won't lock on. They've taken control of everything." A cold silence followed those words. The speaker leaned forward. "Then use the emergency overrides." The defense officer swallowed hard. "Sir, they already have." Her image flickered, as if something was interfering with the Council's secure channels. Behind her, the crew could be seen trying to regain control of their ships. Lights flashing red, alarms blaring, but none of it mattered. The human fleet didn't need to fire a single shot. They simply existed, and their presence alone was enough to make the galaxy tremble. Far from the council chamber, in the deep ruins beneath the black planet, the exploration team still stood in the hangar of ancient human ships. The scientist stared up at the massive vessel above her, its surface glowing with red veins like a heartbeat. The leader of the team gritted his teeth. "They're going to war," she shook her head slowly. "No. They're reminding us they were always here, around them." The human drones hovered silently, watching, calculating, not attacking but never letting them leave. The leader shouted to his team, "Get ready for extraction." But their comms were dead. They were alone, trapped at the center of history being rewritten. In the council chamber, the speaker raised his hand for silence. "We are the council," he shouted. "We have ruled for centuries. We will not bow to ghosts." His words were strong, but his voice was not. The delegates exchanged fearful glances. No one truly believed they could stand against what was outside. One of the elder delegates, her voice low and bitter, whispered, "You built your empire on a lie, and now the truth has come to collect its debt." Her words spread through the chamber like a knife through silk. Above the planet, the human dreadnought began to move slowly, like a sleeping beast opening its eyes. Its hull opened in several places, revealing rows of massive black cannons that didn't glow or hum like council weapons. They simply waited, silent and ready. The council fleet surrounding the system floated helpless. Locked out of its own control, some captains tried manual overrides but failed. Every system responded to one voice now, not theirs. A voice that had been silent for centuries. The captain of the main council flagship stood frozen in front of his console. The screen flickered and then a human face appeared again. The same calm voice from before. "You called us myths," it said. "But we were the foundation of everything you built," the captain shouted. "What do you want?" The human tilted his head slowly. "The truth." The captain stepped back, the room behind him falling into chaos as his officers screamed. "They're overriding the power cores." The human's eyes glimmered faintly. "We already have." The transmission ended without a sound, leaving only the dreadnought staring back at them like a giant predator in the dark. In the ruins below, the scientist whispered, "They're speaking to the council." The leader clenched his fists. "Then they've already won." The ground shook as the ancient human ships around them began to rise, their engines making no noise, just a deep vibration that echoed through bone and metal. The drones moved aside, creating a path for the team to follow. The scientist looked at the leader. "They want us to leave," he frowned. "Or they want us to witness," she whispered back. Same thing. Back in the chamber, the speaker shouted over the noise. "We will not surrender to ghosts," another delegate snapped. "These are not ghosts," one of the defense generals stormed in. His uniform ripped, his voice hoarse. "Our fleets are offline. They can move us like puppets." The speaker turned pale. "Then what do you suggest?" The general looked at him with hollow eyes. "You built this lie. Now you deal with the truth." The room went silent again as the speaker tried to steady his breath. Suddenly, the massive screen in the center of the chamber flickered to life on its own. No one had touched it. A human figure appeared. Not a face this time, but a full projection. The figure wore black armor, its voice calm and cold. "You erased us from history," it said, "but history is not a story you get to write alone." The speaker stepped forward, trying to sound brave. "We are the council. We control the galaxy." The human tilted its head. "Not anymore." The image shifted to show the human fleet fully deployed. Thousands of ships surrounding the council systems, like a storm swallowing light on the surface. The scientist and the team watched as the human dreadnought rose higher. Casting its shadow across the planet, the leader whispered, "They don't even need to fire," and he was right. The dreadnought didn't aim a single weapon. It just existed above them, and everyone knew what it meant. Centuries of power were nothing in front of the truth that had been buried. The human figure on the council screen spoke again. "We will not destroy what we built, but we will take back what is ours." A chill ran through every delegate's spine. They understood what that meant. The council was no longer the highest power. It was a relic standing before its maker. The speaker tried to speak, but his voice broke. The human's eyes locked on him. "This is not war," it said softly. "This is memory. In orbit, every council warship powered down completely, like a switch had been flipped. Their engines, weapons, and shields all went silent. Leaving only the human fleet active, the dreadnought rotated slowly, its shadow covering the entire system. On the ground, the team watched in awe and fear as human symbols began to glow across the ruins. Messages written in a language long erased. The scientist whispered, "They never left. They've always been here inside the council chamber." The human image faded, leaving behind silence heavier than any weapon. The speaker collapsed into his chair, sweat running down his forehead. Around him, the other leaders stared at each other with the same realization. The galaxy they thought they controlled no longer belonged to them. Somewhere out there, humanity had returned, and their presence alone was rewriting every rule the council had ever made. No one dared to speak again, because deep down they all understood. They were standing at the beginning of the end of their empire, and no army could stop it. The truth had finally spoken, and it wore a human face. The black dreadnought drifted closer to the council's core world, silent as a shadow. Its size so massive, it looked like it could swallow entire cities without firing a single shot. Across the galaxy, every screen, every communication hub, every military network showed the same image. The return of humanity. Fleets of alien warships hung frozen, powerless in orbit, unable to move, unable to resist. The sound of alarms echoed through control rooms. But there was nothing to fight, because the enemy wasn't attacking. The enemy was simply watching, and somehow that was worse. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, the speaker sat with trembling hands, gripping the edge of his desk. His voice barely steady as he whispered, "They haven't fired." "Not once," a delegate from the outer colonies shouted. "They don't need to fire. Can't you see what they're doing?" Another delegate slammed the table. "Then speak to them. Make a deal, offer them anything." But the speaker stared at the floor, because he already knew humanity didn't come for trade. They came for the truth. In orbit, aboard the council flagship, the captain stood before the darkened bridge, the crew waiting for an order he couldn't give. Then the main screen flickered on by itself, and the same human face appeared, calm and unblinking. "You buried our name beneath your lies," the voice said, its tone soft but heavy like thunder far away. "You built your empire on the bones of our silence." The captain clenched his fists. "What do you want from us?" The human's eyes didn't blink. "You already know." The screen went black again, leaving the crew in cold silence. On the black planet below, the exploration team moved carefully through the ruins as the human machines began to open more passageways. The scientist whispered, "They're not attacking us. They're showing us something." The leader narrowed his eyes. "Why us?" She touched one of the glowing walls, her voice soft. "Because we came looking for the lie." They reached a massive underground hall, unlike any they had seen before. In the center of the room stood a long table made of black stone and metal, but around it were hundreds of chairs, everyone empty, waiting. The leader took a slow breath. "This looks like a council," she finished his sentence. "Their council, far away, in hidden corners of the galaxy." Millions of civilians stared at the human fleets through shaky live transmissions. Whispers grew into fear. Fear turned into panic. Panic turned into riots. "They're real," someone shouted. "They were here before us." Entire colonies demanded answers, asking why the council had lied for centuries. Why they erased humanity from history. In some places, people burned council flags. In others, they simply stared at the sky, waiting for what was coming. Back in the council chamber, a general burst through the doors, his uniform ripped and dirty. "We can't hold them off," he shouted. "Every ship, every defense grid, every planetary shield is under their control." The speaker's voice shook. "They've invaded our systems." The general laughed bitterly. "No, they're not invading. They're reclaiming." The delegates erupted into panic. some calling for surrender, some screaming about resistance. But one of the elder council members stood slowly, her voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "We thought they were dead," she said. "We told the galaxy they were monsters. But the truth is, they built everything we have." A sudden sound cut through the noise. Every screen in the chamber went black. Then a single human symbol appeared, glowing white against the darkness. The same word in every language. "Remember?" The symbol expanded until it filled the entire room. Then a human voice spoke, clear and calm. "This is not war. This is history returning," the speaker shouted. "Show yourself!" And then, like a shadow forming from smoke, the human figure appeared again, not on a screen this time, but standing in the center of the chamber as a living projection. The figure wore no weapon, no armor, just a dark uniform and calm eyes that made every alien in the room feel small. "You built your empire on our silence," the figure said. "You turned our name into a myth to keep your people in line." The speaker forced a shaky smile. "If you're here to destroy us, then do it." The figure's head tilted slightly. "We're not here to destroy." The speaker's smile broke. "Then what do you want?" The figure took a step forward, its voice dropping lower. "We want the truth. On the black planet." The scientist stood at the long table, her hand brushing against the smooth surface. A whisper echoed through the hall. Not from the sphere this time, but from the walls themselves. This was the first seat of power. She turned to the leader. "They ruled from here." He frowned. "Then why did they disappear?" She stared at the symbols around the room. Maybe they didn't, back in orbit. The dreadnought moved again, and for the first time, the Council fleet's sensors picked up something more. Behind the main ship, hidden in the darkness of the void, more human fleets were arriving. Hundreds of thousands of ships, larger than anything the Council had ever built. "Not invading, just taking positions," the captain whispered to his crew. "This isn't a battle," one of his officers replied in a shaking voice. "No, this is a takeover." In the council chamber, the speaker shouted, "The galaxy belongs to us." The human figure's eyes narrowed. "The galaxy belongs to the stars, and we were the first to reach them." The delegates stared at each other, their power fading with every second. The human figure turned its gaze to the speaker. "We could end your empire in one breath," the speaker's voice cracked. "Then why haven't you?" The figure's answer came like a whisper. "Because what was stolen must be returned, not burned." The room fell silent, and then the human raised its hand. Every screen in the galaxy flickered and displayed a single message. Not a threat, not a demand, just a fact. The age of lies is over. Across countless worlds, people stood frozen, knowing the universe they thought they understood had just ended. The human fleets moved into formation around the Council's core worlds, their silence more terrifying than any war cry. On the planet below, the scientist whispered, "They're rewriting history." The leader stared up at the ceiling as human drones lifted into the sky, joining the black fleet above. "No," he said softly. "They're restoring it." The ruins around them glowed brighter, a symbol shining on every wall, the symbol of humanity. In the chamber, the speaker fell back into his chair, defeated. The human figure stepped closer and said the final words the council would never forget. "You cannot erase what built you." Then the figure vanished like smoke, leaving behind a silence heavier than any explosion. Outside, the human fleet closed its circle around the council's core, and the galaxy held its breath. The war hadn't even begun, but the outcome was already decided. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had never been this quiet. Not in living memory, not in the history that was taught. The human fleet hung in space like a black storm frozen in time. Their ships surrounded the Council's core worlds, forming a silent wall no one could cross. Not a single shot had been fired. But entire empires had already begun to break from the inside. Governments collapsed, military officers abandoned their posts, and people whispered the same thing again and again. "The humans are back." Inside the council chamber, the speaker sat slumped in his chair. the weight of centuries pressing down on him like iron chains. Around him, the delegates no longer shouted, no longer argued. Their faces were pale, their voices quiet for the first time. They understood they were no longer in control. The chamber's main screen flickered again, and the same human figure appeared, standing tall and calm. "Your lie ruled the galaxy for centuries," the voice said. "But truth has no master," the speaker forced out the words. "What do you want from us?" The figure's eyes glowed faintly. Not with anger, but with something colder, older. "We want you to remember." The speaker clenched his fists. "You could have destroyed us already." The human tilted its head. "We could have. But destruction is not justice." The words fell like stone into still water, sending silent ripples through every delegate in the room. Some lowered their eyes, others tried to look defiant but failed. No one could hold the figure's gaze for long. In orbit above the planet, the Council's once mighty fleet drifted like toys, their systems completely under human control. The dreadnought pulsed with a deep red light, then transmitted one signal across the entire galaxy. Every device, every screen, every console showed the same image. A map of the galaxy, with ancient human markings, old names of star systems long erased from history. Slowly, those names began to replace the Council's. Entire regions reverted to their forgotten designations. The galaxy itself was being rewritten, not with war, but with truth. On the black planet below, the exploration team stood at the base of the ancient council hall. The scientist whispered, "It's happening." The leader looked up at the sky as streaks of red light from orbit traced new paths across the clouds. "They're rewriting everything." She shook her head slowly. "No, they're restoring it." Deep beneath them, the ancient human machines hummed louder, like a heartbeat syncing with the dreadnought above. The ruins that had slept for centuries now came alive like a city breathing again. In the chamber, one delegate rose from his seat, his voice breaking. We can surrender." The speaker turned toward him sharply. "To what?" the delegate's voice cracked. "To what we stole." Silence followed. Then another delegate stood, her hands shaking. "We can't fight them. We built everything on their graves." Whispers spread around the room like smoke. The fear was no longer just of the human fleet, it was of the truth itself. The human figure on the screen seemed to hear them. "We did not return for your surrender," it said. "We returned for what you buried. Across the galaxy, entire planets received transmissions from the human fleet. Not threats, not demands, only messages, old recordings, historical files, forgotten maps, stories of the time before the Council. When humanity had ruled the stars, when their technology had built the gates, the stations, and the networks that the aliens thought they created, people began to realize their empires were built on borrowed bones. On a distant moon, a small group of soldiers tried to fire their defense grid. But the moment they touched the controls, the systems turned red. A single human word appeared on the screen. "Observe," and then their defenses shut down completely. One of the soldiers whispered, "They're everywhere," another replied softly. "No, they've always been." Back in the chamber, the speaker's voice grew weaker. "What happens to us now?" The human figure finally stepped forward, the screen around it glowing with stars. "You will live," it said. "But not as rulers." Gasps spread through the room. The speaker leaned forward. "You can't strip the Council." The human didn't flinch. "We don't need to strip what has already rotted." The delegates froze. Realizing what was happening, their power wasn't being taken with war. It was being erased with truth. In orbit, the dreadnought sent another signal, and this time, massive structures hidden beneath human ships revealed themselves. Giant gates, ancient and black, slowly unfolded like wings. They stretched across space like rivers of light, connecting star systems in seconds. These weren't weapons, they were infrastructure. Infrastructure that predated the Council by thousands of years. A captain on one of the Council's ships whispered, "They're not building an empire." Another officer replied quietly, "They're taking back their own, on the planet." The scientist and the leader watched as drones lifted ancient monuments out of the ground. Towers and pylons rising like giants, returning to their thrones. The scientist whispered, "This place isn't a ruin. It's a capital." The leader stared at her, stunned. "Their capital," she nodded. And it never stopped breathing. The ground trembled as the massive black structure lit up with crimson lines. A pulse shooting into the sky, connecting with the dreadnought above. In the chamber, the human figure raised its hand. The image of the galaxy appeared behind it, slowly shifting from the Council's order to the old human one. "We gave you time," it said softly. "We let you build your stories." "But stories end," the speaker tried to shout, but his voice cracked. "We are the Council." The human's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You were the caretakers of a lie." Then for the first time, the human figure smiled, not with kindness, but with the quiet certainty of a force that had already won. "We are not here to rule," it said. "We are here to remind." The image behind it faded, leaving only the silent faces of the alien rulers who now understood that they were witnessing the end of their age. Across the galaxy, old human stations powered up. Forgotten systems came online. Gates opened one after another. Humanity didn't need to fire. They had already taken control without a war, and the entire galaxy now operated on their terms. The speaker lowered his head, his voice almost a whisper. "We can't stop them." And someone behind him whispered back, "No one ever could." On the black planet, the scientist stood under the rising towers as the sky turned red with human light. "This is their world," she said. The leader looked at the horizon. "No," he said slowly. "This is everyone's world now, but it belongs to them first." Above them, the dreadnought turned slowly, aligning itself with the newly awakened gates. The human figure's final message echoed across every corner of the galaxy. Every ship, every station, every world. "History does not ask for permission to return." Then the projection faded, leaving silence behind, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of a truth too heavy to ignore. In orbit, the dreadnought led the fleet into the Black Gate. One by one, the ships followed like shadows, vanishing into the stars, but their control remained. Their presence was now everywhere, invisible and undeniable. The council chamber remained silent long after the figure disappeared, because everyone in that room understood that this was not an invasion. It was a correction. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as the architects of the stars they had built. And far away, in every corner of the galaxy, people whispered the same words with fear and awe in their voices. The humans were never gone, and for the first time in centuries, the stars belonged to their first builders again.